Okay, we're starting Be'ez Hashem Siman Lamed Zayin, Sefer Vayoel Moshe, and this is a brand new subject now. He's about to start talking about the Rambam and how we identify Mashiach. There's two things. There's the Simanim to identify Mashiach. The Rambam held very strongly that you have to have some kind of system, because otherwise you could have a false Mashiach who could fool people. Like in Taman, this is what he was writing in Geras Taman. So the Rambam has to clearly delineate what's a candidate for Mashiach and what's not.
Right.
But what you're referring to is in Perek Yud Beis from Hilchos Malachim. There the Rambam says some things about the prophecies about what's going to happen in Moisei Mashiach, and there the Rambam says we don't know exactly what it means. But the identifying criteria for Mashiach, we have to know what it means.
Right.
So let's see inside now. Hinei Rambam Zal B'igeres Teman. The Rambam says regarding this story that happened in Yemen, someone who claimed to be Mashiach, and he performed miracles. He brought people back to life, other things like this. Many Jews followed him.
Like he literally brought it dead, or he just faked that somebody was dead?
I guess he faked it, but this is what people said about him. This is what the Rambam heard. The Kos of Sham, the Rambam says there, Ba'arichas Harbe Moed, he goes on for a very long time about it. Lahazir Shaloi Lahamin Boy. He warns the Jews not to believe in this imposter. The Toma Sham Ala Chacham Shekostav Elav. He's amazed that the Rav who wrote the letter to the Rambam, who asked this question to him, that he had any doubts about this person, that he might be Mashiach. He says, "Shekivan she'amad al sifrei hachachamim." He says, since you're a Talmud Chacham, you know how to learn a little bit. How could you have made such a mistake and fallen for this guy?
Why was this imposter's name given?
Why wasn't it given?
Yeah, why did
It's a good question.
Because Shalosh, we know his name, we know Yeshua's name, but why do we know that this imposter?
It's a good question. If we could find the letter that they wrote to the Rambam, maybe we would know the answer, but the Rambam in his letter back doesn't say it. He goes on at length to explain what qualities Mashiach will have. Shehu Navi Gadol Ma'od. He's going to be a very great prophet. That's number one. The Gadol Mikol Navim, he's going to be even greater than the other Navim, Milvad Moshe Rabbeinu Alav Shalom. He'll be greater than all the other Navim except Moshe Rabbeinu. Gam, now this is number two. Gam Yichid Oisei Aboyer Yisborach Shemoy B'dvarim Shelo Yichid Moshe Rabbeinu Alav Shalom. That Mashiach is going to have certain qualities that even Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have. Shenemar B'harichoi B'yiras Hashem. That he'll be able to smell and Paskin in Yiras Hashem.
Is that what Shevuos wasn't able to do, or Bar Kochba?
I don't think any of the false Mashiachs were able to do that.
No, but they tested.
They tested Bar Kochba, right? The Gemara in Sanhedrin, Sanhedrin side of Gimel on the base. The Gemara says that they tested Bar Kochba if he could do this, and he couldn't, and they killed him.
And it's
not like Gemara. We're going to see. We're going to see about this, because the Rambam says that Rabbi Kiva and all the Chachamim believed that Bar Kochba was Mashiach. So I think what we're going to say is that until this test they believed it, not after the test. There's a machlokes the Rambam and the Rabbi. We'll have to get to this in a minute. Now he says the pasuk in Yeshaya Kapitel Yud Aleph, it says that Mashiach won't judge by his eyes, by his what he sees, but rather by his smell. The pasuk goes on and says that the Ruach Hashem will rest on Mashiach and he'll be able to judge and he'll be a Navi. So he's a Navi and he can smell and paskin. B'yamoid ish, the Rambam says, a man will arise who was unknown before he arose. And the miracles that he does, that will happen through him, those are the proofs that he's really Mashiach. He says that besides being a Navi, he has to be a big Talmud Chacham, because Hashem will not just give Nevuah to anybody. Hashem gives only to someone who's very, very wise, very learned man. The Rambam says that he could collect psukim from the whole Tanakh, Ma'alas HaMashiach, to talk about the qualities of Mashiach, that the amazing things that are there are unique to him. Shebishah sheyigala, that at the moment that he's revealed, yibalu kol malchei eretz mishimai, all the kings of the world will be terrified of him. V'yifchadu v'tiboy al malchusam, they'll feel that their whole power is in danger because of him. V'yinaklu eich lamoy kenegdoi, and the other kings of the world will look for ways to fight against him. B'cherev oy b'zulasa, with a sword or with other methods of fighting. So he says, Kloimer, the Rambam says, I think, Shalo yuchlu litoin ula'arer alav, that it's not that they'll be able to dispute that he's Mashiach. Right? A lot of people say when Mashiach comes, are we going to force the Torah on the world and force all the laws of Judaism on the rest of the world? No. And not only that, even the fact that this person is Mashiach, we're not going to force it on the world.
Yeah.
But they're going to believe also that he's Mashiach, just that they're not going to want him to rule over them. They're going to know he's Mashiach, but they're going to say, how can we resist him? How can we fight against him? So, they won't be able to argue that he's not Mashiach. They won't be able to deny it. They'll be scared of all these miracles. They'll put their hands to their mouths. They won't be able to argue back, but they'll still want to fight. That's what he said before. But this idea that the Nevi'im say that there will be an end to war, when Mashiach comes, right? So, but he's going to say this idea that there's going to be peace in the world is not right away. He says, "He's taluk hacherim," the removal of the idea of war from the world, mimizrach shemesh umimarav, from one end of the world to the other. That's not going to happen right away when Mashiach comes. It's going to happen after the war of Gog and Magog ends. Ayin Sham. V'gam batchila kosav she'ein safek shechazaras hanavua hi hakdamas haMashiach. The Rambam says that the return of Nevuah is something that will precede Mashiach. So before Mashiach comes, there will be Nevi'im in the Jewish people. Whether it's Mashiach himself or Eliyahu Hanavi, there will be Nevuah before. Hetakti miktzas midvarav. So I've copied over some of the Rambam's words, B'havin Ketzas Shitasei, to understand a little bit what the Rambam Shita is. I'm not copying the whole thing. He says, I can't copy everything that the Rambam says because it's very, very lengthy. Now, for the next couple of paragraphs, we're going to go off on a tangent to explain what the idea of Mashiach being a Navi is, and this idea of smelling. Before we get back to the main question, in the end of the Siman here, paragraph starting Omnam, that's where the main question begins, that the Rambam is l'choyer a stira to Yad HaChazaka. Yad HaChazaka, he says that Mashiach won't do any miracles, and over here he's saying he will. Okay? That's the main stira. B'hinei Masha Amar Shiyeh Gadol Mikol HaNevi'im. What the Rambam says in Yigeres Teiman, that Mashiach will be greater than all the Nevi'im, Levad mi Moshe Rabbeinu Olav Shalom, except for Moshe. Nira Taimai. It seems that the how he got that was that the Av Shalafiyah Psukim Yeh Gadol Yoyster Mikol HaNevi'im, even though the Psukim sound like he'll be the greatest Navi of all, Mikol Makom K'Moshe Rabbeinu Yefsher. Can't be that he would be on the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. Kivin Shenever V'Lei Kam Navi Oid B'Yisrael K'Moshe. Right? The Torah says there won't be any more Navi like Moshe Rabbeinu. Amnam b'Medrash Tanchuma, he says, however, in the Medrash Tanchuma, Parshas told us, Mevur shedarash al Melech HaMashiach b'pasuk Hinei Yaskil Avdi. There's a whole chapter in Yeshaya, Nun Gimel, I think. It starts with the words Hinei Yaskil Avdi, and it describes someone, a servant who's
intelligent.
What?
Yaskil.
So yeah, so the Medrash Tanchuma darshans that this is going on Mashiach. Yarum the Nasa the Gava Moed. He'll be high and upraised and very, very high up. So it darshans each word. Yarum me Avram. He'll go up high above Avram. The Nisa mi Moshe will be higher than Moshe. So Medrash sounds like it's saying that Mashiach will be higher than Moshe. So how did the Rambam deal with this medrash? So tzarich loimer l'das Rambam bigeres teimon k'masha kostav sham shebozesh yiyeh gadol mimoishe. That the Rambam will hold that in one aspect he is greater than Moshe. Sheyiyeh loy madrega liyos moirach v'dayin. That he'll have this madrega to smell and paskin with the smell. Loy l'mayr einov yishpoit k'mavur b'gemara. V'loy ha'el Moshe Rabbeinu madrega zu. And Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have this ability. So in that aspect, in Nevuah, he's taka going to be less than Moshe, but in the aspect of smelling, he'll be greater than Moshe. V'im kain, efshel lefarish masha kasev v'nisa mi-Moshe alo yisal madrega. We can explain that's what it meant when it said it'll be greater than Moshe. V'lo yal Nevuah, it's not going on Nevuah. Shezeh neged ha-pasuk v'lo yikam navi ka-Moshe. If you say that he's greater than Moshe in Nevuah, then that would be against the pasuk that there is no other navi that's like Moshe. Amnam lefiyah mavur b'zoyar HaKadosh. But he's saying the problem is that the Zohar says that Mashiach will be Moshe Rabbeinu. Take a look at this. It says B'Zohar Kadosh Pinchas Daf Reish Mem Vav Ayin Amud Aleph V'Raya Mehemna Teitzei Daf Reish Pei Soif Amud Aleph Sha'Melech HaMashiach Yiyeh Moshe Rabbeinu Olav Hashem B'Atzmai. How
can it be? Moshe was a Levi. Moshe will be from Yehuda.
So this is like Gilgulim. This is not exact people. V'chein mashma gam b'shar midrashos. It's mashma like that in other places. I don't know what he means. Umasha Nemar Shiyah David. This that it says that Mashiach will be the neshama of David. There's a famous, I think it's a Zohar. I don't know. Maybe it's the Arizal. One of the Sfarim that talks about the Gilgulim says that there's Adam. Right? Adam is Rosh Tevis. Adam, David, Mashiach.
Avram, David, Mashiach.
No, Adam.
Not really.
Adam, Rishon, David share the same neshama because David took the last 70 years of Adam's life, and then Mashiach. So it sounds like he'll be David, not Moshe. So he says, "Kvar tiritz b'Orachayim HaKadosh, Parshas Vayechi, she'iyeh b'Melech HaMashiach nishma shnehem." They're both true. Like a person could have different Gilgulim together. So we'll have a Gilgul of David and Moshe. Yeah, David and Moshe. So lefi zeh. Efshel Farish Masha Omer V'Nisa Mi-Moshe Gam Al Nevuah. Gam Al Nevuah. You could learn that Mashiach will be greater than Moshe in Nevuah because he is Moshe. Ki Im Gam Az Yiyeh Moshe. If he himself will be Moshe. Eino Neged HaKostav Lo Yikam Navi Ka-Moshe. That's not against the pasuk that there won't be any Navi like Moshe.
He'll go Moshe. He'll part of the Shama.
The Rambam was written. The Rambam lived and wrote his Sfarim before the Zohar was discovered, so therefore he didn't know about this Zohar. Okay, so to say that anybody could just get up and say he's Moshe Rabbeinu, he's a Gilgul of Moshe, and therefore he could overcome or overturn Moshe Rabbeinu's Nevuah, that's obviously wrong because we believe that the Torah is loitei muflefes. You can't, and ein navi rashi l'chadash davar. So just because of some shot that he's a Gilgul of Moshe Rabbeinu, you can't just do this. But to answer the question, it's sufficient just for this purpose to answer the question of how he could be on a higher level of nevuah from Moshe. Not that he could actually overturn anything that Moshe said. We're not talking about that aspect. Whatever Moshe said, no other navi could ever overturn. Okay, v'tzas tzarich lahavin l'choyer masha hechlid harambam zal. He says, we have to understand, how did the Rambam know that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have the ability to smell and paskin? He says, how did the Rambam decide this madrega that is written regarding Mashiach, that he knew everything through the smell? How did he know that Moshe didn't have that madrega? How did he know this? You're going to say we find that other people did have this madrega besides Mashiach. For example, in the Zohar Parshas Balak, Daf Kuf Pevav, there's a story that Rabbi Yitzchak and Rabbi Yehuda came to a certain town and they stayed in a certain almana's house, and the little boy came home from Cheder and he said to them, I can't stand next to you because you didn't say Kriya Shema today. And they said, it's not true, we didn't say Kriya Shema because we were Oisik b'mitzvah, we were busy with another mitzvah, so Oisik b'mitzvah, pater in a mitzvah. But they said, Bri b'ma yadata, how did you know that we missed Kriya Shema? So Amalei, he said to them, Berecha de lavu shaychu yadana, I knew from the smell of your clothing, Kad karivna legabaychu, when I got close to you. So you see that this child had that ability. One of the commentaries on the Zohar says, he brings it from the Medrash and Rus, Adam had this ability to tell with smell. That the Nitzotzei Oiris brings down that Reb Chaim Vital says about the Arizal, the Arizal was able to tell by the smell of the clothing, like this child in Parshas Balak in the Zohar. The Kosev B'Shalosh Shuvas Heishiv Moshe, the Shalosh Shuvas Heishiv Moshe, this is Reb Moshe Teitelbaum, the Satmar Rebbe's great-great-grandfather, the Yismach Moshe, yeah. Or Chaim Siman Beis, he says, everything that we find regarding some great person in history, Vadai de Moshe calling the Kulhu Ad Kal Hashoyne. Moshe Rabbeinu had this mila too. Whatever we find someone else had, Moshe had too. Zulas b'melech HaMashiach sheheid olav v'kasev shiyah gadol mi Moshe. Except for Mashiach, that he'll have something greater than Moshe. But we find in general that there's such a thing. So the question is going to be, how did the Rambam know that that Moshe didn't have the ability to smell? All the madregas that everyone else had, he had too.
And how could Moshe not be able to smell and tell a person spiritually?
Right. Even though the Rambam didn't have the Zohar, so he didn't know about this Yinuk of this child in Parshas Balak. How did the Rambam know it that Moshe didn't have this? We have to learn that there are certain aspects in which he did have it, because Moshe had all the milas, the future tzaddikim, but certain aspects he for sure didn't have. That we're going to bring, just to say the kitzur, he's going to bring that they're psukim that say beferish. Moshe Rabbeinu had to listen to a din Torah to understand it. It says that any din Torah that comes up, takrivu nelai ushmativ.
I'll hear it.
Bring it to me and I will hear it. So you see,
Mashiach will smell it all without even need to hear it.
Right. He says there's some different levels of being able to smell. Just like Nevuah has different levels. Even though there were other Nevi'im, other prophets, but they didn't reach the level of prophecy of Moshe. Just similarly, and when we talk about smelling, that he won't judge by his eyes, he won't rebuke by his ears. You'll be able to paskin without hearing, without listening, just by the smell. This high level didn't exist by Moshe, even though he did have some idea of smelling, but not this. Right. In other words, let's say, for example, it says in the Zohar this child could tell if they lay in Kriya Shema or not, but it doesn't say he could paskin with it. It's not the same level.
Wait, how does the child? Where was the child, in the inn?
He was the son of the lady that ran the inn that they stayed by. It was an inn or a house.
Yeah, and there was a visitor.
And Rabbi Yitzchak and Rabbi Yehuda came to visit.
Yeah.
And the child came over to them and said,
"I'm not saying in front of him."
Yeah.
All right.
So basically, that madrega Moshe could have had, but the paskin to actually decide who's right and wrong in the din Torah with smell, that only Mashiach will have.
Tell what is the halacha in this situation, Mashiach will just smell it.
Well, no. So to tell what the halacha is, you can't paskin by nevuah or supernatural powers.
Right.
Halacha has to be.
But who's right, who's wrong?
That's loy l'shamayim. But the facts of a case, like did the person really steal the thing? Did he really borrow the money?
Then Mashiach will spell no.
So take a look. He says, the Shahayu b'nei Aliyah, even though the word tzaddikim shehigishu harbe inyanim b'reach, that we're able to tell things by smell, avaloy higiu ad k'dei kach lachtoich dinu mishpat b'inyanim lechaverai. They didn't get to the ability to actually decide who's right and wrong in the din Torah based on smell. Or lahoitzi maamar, or to force someone to give over money b'chadoyme b'reach bilvad. Yeah. U'matzina b'gemara yuma daf ayin hey. we find the story in the Gemara Yuma that the man paskent. You know the story that by telling where a person's portion of man fell, Moshe Rabbeinu was able to tell who is right and wrong. The Gemara says in Yuma Daf Layin Hey, Kishem Shah Navi Hayer Magid Li Yisrael Mashu B'Chorin V'Stakim, just like a Navi could tell the Yidden what took place in secret. So Kacha Man Magid Lahem Li Yisrael Mashu B'Chorin Mashu B'Stakim. The man could also paskin shilas. How that happened? Ketzad Shnaim Shabo Lifnei Moshe. Let's say two people came to Moshe with a ledin for a din Torah. Zeh Omer Avdi Ganafta. This one says, you stole my slave. The other one says, no, you sold him to me. So Amr Lahem Moshe, Dinu Labaikir Mishpat. Moshe would say, come in the morning and I'll decide. L'macher, next morning, Im Nimsa Oimrai Bebeis Rabbi, if his Oimer of Man, his portion of Man would fall in the Beis Rabbi Rishon, in the first owner, by the first owner's tent, then Biyadua Shezeh Gonva. You see that the second guy was lying and he really stole him. Nimtzo Omer Bebeis Rabbi Sheni. If the Omer of Man fell by the tent of the second master, Biyadua Shezeh Machar, then he's rightfully his because he sold him to him. Let's say a husband and wife came to the din Torah. Hu Omer he sarchalai. The husband says that she was unfaithful. He Omeres hu sarchalai. She says no, he was unfaithful to me. Which Lamaisa, she could still stay married to him, but she doesn't want to. She's saying, Rashi says she's being Tevei the ksuba. She wants a ksuba because she says, I want to get. Usually a lady asks for a get, she doesn't get a ksuba because it's her own fault. She just wants to get divorced. But in this case, she says, I have a right to ask for a ksuba because you're being unfaithful. I don't want to live with you if you do that to me. She could, but she doesn't want to. Basically, so Amar Lahem Moshe, Dinu Labaikir Mishpat. Moshe says, come in the morning, L'macher Nimsa Oimra V'chulu. The Gemara says if the portion of man fell by the husband, it shows that she was really faithful to him, and he doesn't have to give a divorce. This is the look in the Gemara. There's a girsa and there's a girsa sabach. But I'm going with the girsa sabach. That basically if the Omer fell by her husband's house, it shows that she was faithful to him. And if not, it shows that she was unfaithful. It shows that she has to get divorced. Okay, Baharei shehutzrach liyadiyazu al yidei aman. You see that Moshe couldn't just paskin by smelling. He had to wait for the man to fall. Shalomachar b'bayker in the morning to tell him who was right. V'gam Yisrei amar lo al dinim u'mishpatim navo tibol. The Moshe was paskining, and it took him a lot of effort. And Yisrei told him, "You're going to get tired of it." Moshe amar takrivu neilai shmativ. Moshe said himself that I'll listen to your din Torah. Bring it to me, and I'll listen to it. Shayitzarach l'shmiya al kopanim. He needed to at least listen to it. So you see from all these sources that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have the ability to smell. He didn't have to hear or see. He just paskins with his smell. We can't go on at length to explain what the difference is between the Madrega of Mashiach and the Madrega of Moshe, because we don't really understand either of them. But you have to understand that's how the Rambam got that Mashiach will have such a quality that Moshe didn't have. From these psukim and from the Maisa and Yuma that we just quoted. You're going to ask me, how could you use nevuah to paskin in the din Torah, the aman and the man, right? The hagoshes hareach, and maybe with smell. Afki Torah lo b'shamayim. The Torah is not in shamayim. We have to paskin based on svara now, right? Not with nevuah. So he says, Kvar kosav amar Ram ben Chaviv she'ach b'masha tali b'bir halacha amrin lo b'shamayim. Lo b'shamayim only applies to paskining between two different shittas, or learning up a Gemara, learning up a pasuk. That you have to do with your own head. To know what the mitzias is, whether the lady was unfaithful, whether the man sold his evid or not, that you could use supernatural nevuah or other supernatural means.
Right.
If these things really work, you could use them. Okay, so now back to the subject that the Rambam Al-Quds says that Mashiach will have miraculous abilities. So the problem with this is Yada Chazaka. Omnam Sarach Lis Boinim Bazesh Lichoyer Bashkaf Rishoyna Divrei Rambam Elu Lirim Kistira Neged Masha Kasa B'Sefer Hayad Perek Yudalef Milchus Malachim Halacha Gimel. That the Rambam in Hilchos Malachim says not like this. He says Al Yal B'Dait Chasha Melech HaMashiach Tzarech Lastos Oisis and Moifsim. Don't think that Mashiach will have to do miraculous feats. And have to change things about the world, or bring people back to life. And by the way, in the uncensored Rambam, he adds in Tipshim Oimrim. I have it here, copied here. So basically, that just to make the Rebbe's kasha starker, I'm just saying that he says there's a steer between Yad HaChazaka and the Yegaris Teiman. It's not only that. In the Yad HaChazaka, he adds in the word that Tipshim are the ones who say that there will be Nisim and
why Tipshim? Why are you so stupid for a thing which has like miracles?
So this is part of what we're going to get to when he's going to explain the teres to the steer.
There are many fools who could believe it, but why we're so fools for thinking Mashiach like miracles?
Basically, I think the answer is going to be that to make Mashiach dependent on that is stupidity, because any false person could come along and claim to be Mashiach if he could manage to pull it off. Take some rocks, stick them in the river, and walk on them, make it like he's walking on the water. Anybody could do such a thing and try to fool people. So right. you can't make Mashiach dependent on such a thing. Ein adavar kain. Shaharei Rabbi Akiva haya noisei kelev shel ben Koziva. Rabbi Akiva was the noisei kelev. You see, like he served him. He helped him. He helped Ben Koziva, who was the false Mashiach that arose in the about 60 years after the Churban.
Wait, how exactly the story of Ben Koziva go? What exactly happened in the story of Ben Koziva?
Well, Bar Kochba, this person Bar Kochba Ben Koziva arose about 60 years after the Churban.
Yeah.
He gathered a big army to himself, that very strong people, the Gemara says, and he conquered Yerushalayim back from the Romans. He drove the Roman legions out of Yerushalayim. Probably built the Beis HaMikdash also, because there's a picture on the coins that he printed, picture of the Beis HaMikdash.
Yeah.
And then what happened was the Romans came to throw him out. Hadrian, the emperor, then brought his whole army there and kicked the Yidden out of Yerushalayim, and they went to the city of Beitar.
Yeah, killed Beitar.
And then the Gemara, the Medrash, I think, says that Bar Kochba's Malchus lasted for 2.5 years. So I don't know if
he was appointed as king?
I don't know if he's appointed, but he became king. He became like a leader because everyone followed him in the rebellion against Rome. The Medrash in Eicha and the Yerushalmi in Tainus, it says there that the end of the story was that he was in the city of Beitar, right, and the Romans were besieging it, and they couldn't conquer it until they managed to get Bar Kochba to commit a great sin. What they did was they had a person go in and whisper in his ear something. I think they whispered in Rabbi Elazar HaModai's ear. Rabbi Elazar HaModai was a great tzaddik, and because of this tzaddik, the schus of the tzaddik protected the city. And the Romans heard about this tzaddik. They realized that until they kill him, they won't be able to conquer Beitar. So they had someone come whisper in his ear something, and really he whispered nothing, but Bar Kochba suspected him of being a traitor, and he killed him. So once he killed him, that was it. Then the whole tide turned around, and the Gemara says he was bitten by a snake. So it's a steer. The Bavli, Bar Kochba, Bar Kochba was bitten by a snake. The Bavli in Sadi Gimel on the base, Sanhedrin, it says that the Chachamim killed him, and this Yerushalmi and the Medrash says that it was a snake. The Ridvaz answers the stira by saying that they're both true. First, the Chachamim pulled back their support from him, and then, once they did that, then he began losing the war. Rabbi Akiva, he and all the Chachamim of his generation thought Shehu Melech HaMashiach. They thought that Bar Koziva was Mashiach.
But Ben Koziva was the same person as Bar Kochba?
Yeah.
Why Bar Kochba?
His real name was Ben Koziva, and he just
sound deception.
Well, I don't know if he meant it that way, but that was his name. But the Romans, whatever, he himself took the name Bar Kochba as like a like a warrior, the son of the star, because the star, the pasuk says, Darch Koich of Miyakov, that Mashiach is compared to a star. So he took that name to make himself into a false Mashiach. Kitzer, so this is the Rambam says that all the Chachamim thought that Bar Kokhba was Mashiach. We're going to talk about that later, because it's shver. The Yerushalmi says that another Tana, Rabbi Yochanan ben Terasa, answered back to Rabbi Akiva, and he said, Akiva, Asavim bil chayecha v'adayin ben David lo yibla. He says, the grass will grow on your chin before the son of David comes. So he said basically he's not Mashiach. So
but he said it because Rabbi Akiva had no hair at all on himself. Rabbi Akiva, I do believe they call Rabbi Akiva was absolutely hairless.
So therefore what? Was that?
He said, Rabbi Akiva, as unlikely as it is that the hair will grow on you, the same way it take that long.
That's a good shot. All right.
So Rabbi Akiva, it was completely bald and no hair on himself at all.
Who says that shot?
I forget where, but it's somewhere. Rabbi Akiva was totally hairless.
Anyway, so Ad Shener Rag Ba'avoinus, until Bar Kokhba was killed through the sins. And we never find that the Chacham asked him to perform any miracles. Okay, just hold on for a second. The Ikar Advarim Kachahain, and the main idea of this is that the Torah's laws are forever. You can't add to the Torah. Okay, that's the end of Halacha Gimel. Now, what's going to be shver is what does the Rambam mean with these words? How do these things come in here? He's talking about Bar Kokhba not doing miracles, and then he says the Torah won't change. What does that have to do with it? So take a look in the uncensored Rambam, page 2 in the sheets here. Yeah. He says that first of all, there's a few extra words here. Kivan shenerag noida she'eno Mashiach. The end of the first paragraph, after it says that they thought that he was Melech HaMashiach until he was killed, the Rambam adds on, once he was killed, it was known that he's not Mashiach. This Rambam is a slap in the face to the Christians. That's why they took it out. So there's noida she'eno Mashiach. Anyway, they didn't ask for an ois. That's the same as the regular Rambam. Then he says, "V'ikar advarim kachahein sha'Torah hazois ein chukeo mishpoteo mishtanim la'olam." You see a slight difference. He says the Torah's laws can't change. You can't change them. You can't add or subtract. Anybody who adds or subtracts from the Torah, or he takes the Torah and interprets it differently from the way we're supposed to interpret it. This is again a slap in the face of the Christians, because the Christians based their emunah and yashka on oisitim oifsim. And he died, right? He was killed, and he changed the Torah. So he's saying that that's exactly the opposite of what Mashiach is supposed to be. Mashiach is not supposed to change the Torah. We don't base ourselves oisitim oifsim, and he can't interpret the Torah differently.
Right, the Zionists do all three of them.
And he wasn't killed. So, but the Rebbe is going to ask, if you take a look just quickly in Siman Mem, right at the beginning, he's going to ask the question of what is this line doing in the Rambam? He says, he starts out saying that Mashiach won't do any miracles. He says the Torah will last forever. We don't understand the connection here. Let's say Mashiach would have to do miracles. Would that change the laws of the Torah? Yeah? So he asked this question, and Siman Mem Ches, he answers it. Just to take a quick look at the end of Siman Mem Ches, page Samach Beis. He says, the bottom of the first column on the page, like 4 lines up from the bottom, it says, "V'lachein hem bida Rambam zal hayisoid harishon." That's why the Rambam says that the main foundation of Mashiach is not miracles, but rather sheyiyeh hoiga b'Torah v'oisik b'mitzvahs k'David Aviv. Because in the intervening Simanim, the Rebbe does say that Mashiach will do oisim oifsim. like in Geras Teman. Just that's not the main foundation of his criteria to be identified as Mashiach. Why? Because he says, that's the main thing. You have to force all the Jews to follow it, to strengthen it. That's a sure way to identify Mashiach, not the miracles. He says, even the Sefer Vayoel, besides the Geras Teman, he says that Mashiach will be on the Madrega almost like Moshe, and he'll do other amazing things. The main thing is that Mashiach will get all the Jews to do tshuva and follow the whole Torah. We should be zeicher to see this quickly. That's the main criterion. That's why the Rambam, after he says that it's not dependent on miracles, right? He says that's why the Rambam adds these words. If we're going to say that Mashiach is dependent on miracles, then we could get led astray by a false Mashiach. He says, you have a false person like Yashka who does miracles and then says to change the Torah. But rather, the Rambam says the fact that the Yidden will do tshuva, kulam, all the Yidden will do tshuva. Tera magula, hu mavur b'Torah akdosha. That's something that's in the Torah of the EF Shishtana. It can't change. But like we said, also it could be that if you look at the original Rambam, you see that he's saying against the Christians. Basically, that's his target. That's why he says that that Mashiach can't do moifsim, is not going to be based on moifsim, and he's not going to change the Torah. Okay, now weiter, back in Siman Lamed Zayin, yeah. Finishing up the Rambam. This is the beginning of Halacha Daled. Perak Yud Aleph Malach Daled. V'imyamoed Melech mibeis David. If a king arises from the house of David, who learns Torah, and he does mitzvahs keDavid, like David, kefi Torah shebichsav v'shebal peh, v'yachuv kol Yisrael leilech ba, and he forces all the Jews to follow the Torah, ulechazik bidka, and to strengthen its weak points, harehu becheskes Mashiach, then he is assumed to be Mashiach. And by the way, when the Rebbe quotes things, you see that he doesn't. It looks like he wasn't copying word for word. He either knew it by heart, or else he looked at it and then quickly copied it. There are words that are changed a little bit. If you look in the Rambam, even the censored version, which Rabbi probably had, you see that there are some words different. Take a look. Halacha Daled, page 1. It says, He skipped the word Aviv. It's not so consequential, but just to show that he's not, going word for word. Here's an important thing. The Rambam says that Mashiach will have to fight the war of Hashem. So, Rabbi left out those words. But probably he wasn't copying it word for word. That doesn't mean to leave it out. What?
Verbatim?
Yeah, he's not copying word for word. Harei becheskes shu Mashiach. So the Rambam says then he's becheskes Mashiach. Im asa v'yitzliach v'chulu. So Rabbi doesn't finish the sentence, but look at the end. It says Im asa v'yitzliach ubana mikdash b'mkoymai, and he built the base of mikdash v'kibet nidchei Yisrael, and he gathered the scattered Jews from the rest of the world. Harei zeh Mashiach b'vadai. Then he's for sure Mashiach. And if you look in the uncensored one, there's more words over here. The Halacha Daled, he says, at the end of paragraph, the third paragraph on the page, he says, and he defeated all the peoples that are around him. That the censor took out too, because we don't want to say too much about Mashiach's wars.
Yeah.
And he built the base of Mikdash, keep it in Israel. Mashiach b'vadai. V'im lo yitzliach. Now this whole paragraph was taken out by the censor. If he did not succeed ad Cohen, he didn't get to this stage. In other words, he he got to the first stage, but he didn't do the second stage. Or nerag, or he was killed. Again with the killed, right? We know for sure that he's not the one that Torah promised. He's like a regular king. He's not a Rasha, because he forced the Yidden to do tshuva. He did the first stage of Chezki's Mashiach, but he's not the one. Hashem only caused him to arise in order to test people. That people will stumble in order to purify them, to test them, until the end. Okay, so that's the uncensored version. Now take a look back in the Vayoel Moshe. Nevur mizeh. We see from this whole Rambam that the whole Siman of Mashiach is just that he'll force the Jews to follow the Torah. The Zula zeh ein tzarich shum oisim oifis. He doesn't have to do any miracle. Like he brought, the Ben Koziva didn't do miracles. So v'yigeres teman herich lahavi harbe milas u'moifisim noiroim. Mashenkein, you see, on the other hand, the Yigeres Teman brings many great qualities, great miracles. Shehiyeh b'melech HaMashiach. Asher mi she'ein boy kol zeh v'ba'alei zeh ein Mashiach. The Rambam says anybody who doesn't do that can't be Mashiach. The near l'choyer kistir. So you see, this sounds like a contradiction to the Yad HaChazaka. Ukvar evesi le'el shebetshuvos of le'esik nosoi. He says, I already brought down, you can't say that the Rambam was chayzer, that he wrote Yigeres Teman first, let's say, and then he wrote the Yad HaChazaka and he changed his mind. Can't say that because in his old age, he wrote a tshuva to the Chachmei Marseille, after Shekvar Kosev b'Sefer Yad, even just after he wrote Sefer Yad, Hiskim L'chol Ma'asher Kosev b'Yigeres Teman, and still he approved of what he wrote. He wrote that, he agrees to whatever he wrote in Yigeres Teman. So he didn't change his mind, so we have to understand how to answer up this contradiction. Okay?